people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Ahead of the super middleweight undisputed title fight between Cruz, the champion, and Savannah Marshall, the challenger, Shields says Cruz will win. Physically, mentally stronger than Savannah Marshall. I'm sure that being pals with Cruz has nothing to do with it. No, based on her experiences with both boxers, Shields cannot envision England's Marshall beating the undisputed super middleweight champion when they meet July 1st at the AO Arena in Manchester, England. Shields favors Cruz as much for her mental makeup as her physical attributes. I believe Franchon will win the fight, Shields told BoxingScene.com. Franchon is stronger than Savannah Marshall, and I can say that after experiencing both of them inside the ring. She's mentally stronger than Savannah Marshall also. I watched the press conference and I seen Savannah say, "Oh, I believe that I'll beat Franchon." She said it in a way that was not confident and like she's taking this fight to kind of hide her shame.
I don't think Franchon is stronger than Savannah.
I don't think boxing or analytics are what are motivating these comments from Clarissa Shields. I don't think Franchon is stronger than Savannah because Franchon and Savannah share a common opponent in Ashley Curry.
Yeah.
And where Franchon went the distance with Ashley Curry, Savannah stopped her in 3 rounds.
So punch for punch, I don't actually think Franchon is a bigger puncher than Savannah. I don't think she's stronger.
More prolific, maybe. A busier puncher, but not a stronger puncher, not punch for punch.
No.
As of right now, I'm the better fighter between me and Franchon.
She just had to get that in there.
Because I beat Franchon in the ring, Shields said. Savannah Marshall said she's going to knock me out in 2 rounds. I won't last. She's going to catch me with 1 punch. All she needs is 1.
Is this about your fight with Savannah or Franchon's fight with Savannah?
She was going to do all this stuff in the lead-up. She got in my face and she's talking trash, and now at the press conference with Franchon, she's all humble. So I humbled Savannah Marshall, and I took all her belief in her boxing ability and her power away. And I think that her having the attitude that she has now will definitely be her downfall against Franchon, because Franchon is 100% confident in her skills, her power, her grit, her heart. She won't just lay down for Savannah, like no matter what.
I do agree there.
Franchon is strong in her own way, has her own set of skills that could give Savannah some problems. I actually feel like Franchon would give Savannah more problems than Jadeja Green would, but Jadeja Green would likely stop Franchon Cruz. Boxing math is funny like that.
It can be.
Because Franchon Cruz is a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, volume puncher, if she tried to out-volume Jadeja Green, she might get countered, she might get stopped. Whereas if she tries that same tactic with Savannah Marshall, she might fluster Savannah because Savannah needs room to work.
She needs space.
She is usually so much taller and longer than her opponents. She needs more room to work. Mid-range to inside, a smaller fighter might have the advantage because they can string shots together faster than a fighter with longer arms. Long arms like Savannah's.
Franchon might be able to fluster Savannah.
Though it's not one way. In attempting to close the distance on Savannah, Franchon Cruz might get nailed hard on the way in. Get caught coming through the front door. That's the caveat.
Franchon may have the advantage in the pocket, but she's got to get there first.
Savannah Marshall being a nimble target, light on her feet, characteristically moving around the ring, using it. With Franchon Cruz, she has to create space and maintain it to really drive her punches, have the room to do it.
The mistake Savannah made in the Shields fight was trading punches mid-range to inside, selling out, giving up her height, giving up her reach.
At that range, her punches won't have as much on them because she doesn't have as much room to work. Clarissa continued, "The only thing that plays in Marshall's favor is her size, but Franchon is also bigger than me," Shields said. "I think the both of them will come in the day after the weigh-in, 185, 195, and there'll be some very big girls in the ring, and they'll show their power that they both possess. It won't be like Marshall is in there with a smaller girl." Shields also emphasized that the disparity in the knockout ratios of Marshall, 77%, and Cruz, 22%, is deceiving. Like I said, it was all smoke and mirrors, Shields said.
Smoke and mirrors.
They share a common opponent in Ashley Curry. Savannah Marshall stopped her. Franchon didn't.
Clarissa and Savannah share a common opponent, and Hannah Rankin. Savannah stopped her. Clarissa didn't.
If Savannah actually stops Franchon Cruz, are we still going to be hearing about how her power's smoke and mirrors?
Yeah, I don't agree with Clarissa. I think she's just being an ungracious sportswoman.
Savannah Marshall had fought against 147-pounders, 140-pounders.
But so did Clarissa. What do you think Ivana Habazin was?
And ballooned him up to 168 and 160 and then knocked him out.
Like you fighting a 147-pounder in Ivana Habazin, except you didn't knock her out.
These girls had 3 weeks' notice, 1 week's notice. She was fighting girls who weren't even prepared. And so they were coming from a smaller weight class. And when she was rehydrating up to 195, she was 40, 50 pounds bigger than these girls. And people were wondering why she has all these knockouts. I don't think it'll be that way, her versus Franchon.
I think Clarissa's full of shit because the Hannah Rankin fight wasn't a short notice fight.
Hannah Rankin had a full camp. She had time to prepare. Hannah Rankin, who's a common opponent between Clarissa and Savannah. I think it bothers Clarissa that she's not a knockout merchant.
And Savannah is.
And I don't think Clarissa Shields is in any position to talk when it comes to bringing up fighters from smaller weights, because that's what she did with Hannah Gabriels. Hannah Gabriels at the time was campaigning as a junior middleweight. Clarissa brought her up to middleweight.
She didn't stop her.
Even though Hannah Gabriels had been stopped before. She had been stopped before at junior middleweight by the Dominican Republic's own Oxandia Castillo. How can Clarissa Shields criticize Savannah for doing the same thing that she did?
The only difference is that when Savannah did it, she knocked the fucking girl out. You couldn't.
You didn't. I think it bothers Clarissa. I think it's a sore spot that she's not more of a knockout merchant because, you know, casuals, they do love knockouts. It does go a long way towards a fighter's marketability when they can finish an opponent in sensational fashion. And Clarissa Shields, skilled as she might be, she can.
She don't.
Doesn't knock people out. Savannah does. There's a chance, a good chance, that Savannah might actually knock out Franchon Cruz.
There's a chance.
So I don't expect Clarissa Shields to acknowledge that it's a closer fight than she makes it out to be. Not because Franchon is bad. Franchon's a good fighter, but so is Savannah. And I think Clarissa struggles to admit that.
I saw both their fights. The Franchon Cruz fight, the Savannah Marshall fight. She had to work way harder with Savannah than she did with Franchon.
Just think she's being disingenuous and obtuse as usual.
Which is expected.
Men's middleweight and super middleweight news. Canelo versus Munguia fight is inevitable to keep Mexican boxing alive, says De La Hoya.
Mexican boxing isn't in any danger of dying out. Mexico is still producing many good fighters and champions like Mauricio Lara, like Luis Lopez.
The only way Mexican boxing would be in danger of dying out is if Mexican fighters were matched as soft as your Mexican fighter, Jaime Munguia.
Right.
Former Alvarez promoter Oscar De La Hoya believes he has a future foe sitting in his stable in Munguia, telling BoxingScene.com in an interview that he would make the All-Mexico matchup happen in a split second.
He said that about Zerto, too, before Dimitri took him to school.
I killed that narrative. What's stopping it is that Canelo is not wanting to fight another Mexican fighter, which is kind of absurd, said De La Hoya, because if you're a fighter, you're a fighter. You fight anybody who is on top. You fight anybody who is in your way.
Jaime is none of those things. He's neither on top or in Canelo Alvarez's way.
You fight anybody who is in your way and is going to create a major fight for you. Munguia is right there knocking on his door. If I am going to pressure these fighters to fight Munguia, then that's what I'm going to have to do. Going the sanctioning body route by beating the guys that Canelo has beaten.
Beating guys Canelo has beaten. Canelo would get crucified if he were fighting the fighters that Munguia's been fighting.
In order to get that fight with Canelo, there are different ways.
This is pathetic.
It's pathetic when Demetrius Andre does it. It's pathetic when Jermall Charlo does it. And it's still pathetic when Jaime Munguia and Oscar De La Hoya do it. Setting their sights on one guy, just one guy, while not fighting in any meaningful fights.
It's pathetic.
Canelo didn't get to becoming Canelo by having the kind of fights that these fighters are fighting in. Demetrius Andre, Jermall Charlo, Jaime Munguia, his countryman. Canelo Alvarez didn't go on to become the face of boxing by being matched baby soft like these fighters are matched baby soft. And what they want to do is skip ahead of the queue, skip ahead of the line.
The fundamental flaw with this strategy from Oscar is that a guy like Canelo don't pay the cost to be the boss, to bow down to you, to bow down to your fighter.
Many months ago, the people at Showtime made an offer to do a Munguia versus Charlo fight on their side of things. They were going to pay for it. Oscar was averse to this.
He didn't want to send Munguia over there, just to end up sending Ryan Garcia over there.
Ryan, who is a bigger part of Golden Boy Promotions' bottom line than Jaime is, Ryan is arguably the most popular fighter in their stable. You didn't want to send Jaime over there just to end up sending Ryan?
Backwards.
For that, you should have just sent Jaime. Jaime stood a better chance of beating Jermall Charlo than Ryan stood of beating Gervonta Davis. I actually like Jaime's chances against the very mundane and mediocre Jermall Charlo, who we saw get lumped up by Juan Macias Montiel.
Yeah.
I strongly feel that Alvarez versus Munguia, an all-Mexican showdown, is inevitable. Boxing hasn't had two Mexican warriors collide in recent times. Alvarez versus Munguia has to happen in the near future in order to keep Mexican boxing alive, thriving, and bigger than ever. We have to show the fans that Mexico's boxing is the very best. Canelo and Jaime in the near future. I believe it can happen.
Mexican boxing is doing just fine with champions like Emmanuel Navarrete, Luis Lopez, Mauricio Lara.
Mexican boxing isn't in any danger of dying out, especially when approximately 7 million people in Mexico tuned in to see Canelo versus Ryder. Those are just the Mexican numbers.
7 million.
Mexican boxing is doing just fine. And what this really is an act of desperation from Oscar De La Hoya, who can't shut the fuck up about Canelo.
Ever since Canelo Alvarez parted ways with Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya has been acting more and more like a jilted ex. It's over.
It's done. Canelo doesn't work with you anymore.
He's not your fighter. He's not going to be your fighter.
In the men's middleweight division, you have Jaime Munguia, you have Jermall Charlo, you have Janibek Alimkhanuly, you have Erislandy Lara. Why don't Jaime Munguia target one of those guys? Why don't he fight one of them?
The idea that it's Canelo or bust, Canelo or nobody. I mean, you see how well it's working for Demetrius Andre.
Right? This is a guy who didn't have no time for a Lara fight, a Korobov fight, a Derevyanchenko fight,
a Charlo fight, Jermell Charlo, not to be confused with Jermall Charlo,
a Janibek fight, a Parker fight, a Jacobs fight. The only thing out of this guy's mouth is Canelo. Canelo.
And look at how well it's worked out for him.
Staying on easy street, waiting to win the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes. Not carving out a lane of your own. Fighting in other fights, other good fights with other good fighters to give people a reason to talk about you.
A reason to look at you and bring you up.
Look at how well that strategy has worked out for Demetrius Andre, the guy who never beat a champion to be a champion. Every title he ever won was vacant.
No signature fights, no marquee value.
This idea that it's Canelo or bust, it's Canelo or nobody, it's not working for him, but it's going to work for Jaime at some point. That kid's gonna have to fight somebody with a fucking pulse.
If you're so thirsty to make an all-Mexican shootout, why don't you just make Munguia versus Ramirez? Zerto Ramirez, your fighter.
If you're telling yourself that's ridiculous, well, it's just as ridiculous to say that Jaime Munguia is on top and in Canelo Alvarez's way.
How?
In what way?
Explain it.
Maybe Oscar should call Bob, see about getting Janibek to give Jaime Munguia a title shot.
Or Esquiva Falcao if he wins the IBF.
One of them. As far as Janibek Alimkhanuly, who was in action this past weekend, stated, Canelo, Charlo, where are you? I am ready for anybody, anytime, anywhere.
He's not going to get either of those fights.
Janibek Alimkhanuly didn't waste any time with his latest opponent. Almost as flawless as his second-round knockout of Montreal's Stephen Butler was the ever-proving English he spoke to call out the biggest names in and around the middleweight division. Canelo, Charlo, where are you? Kazakhstan's Alimkhanuly rhetorically asked, following the second defense of his WBO middleweight title this past Saturday in Stockton, California. I am ready for anybody, anytime, anywhere.
The middleweight division
It's dying.
is a division that's dying on the vine. I've said that in many videos.
As there are many contributing factors, and many that are contributing to this.
Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andre to an extent, Jaime Munguia, Chris Eubank Jr.
If the middleweight division isn't the glamour weight, the glamour division that it used to be in previous years, it's because of these fighters, these aforementioned names who want to play it safe and stay on easy street. They don't want to take any risks, but risks are what the people pay to see. That's what we pay to watch.
That's it.
Champions and boxing superstars, where are you? Alimkhanuly questioned in perfect English. I'm waiting. Let's go. I am the most avoided fighter, the middleweight king. I'm ready.
Let's go. Top rank. Who's next?
Hard to say. There aren't very many people calling out Janibek Alimkhanuly, just Carlos Adames, a PBC fighter who fights on the PBC side of things, the WBC's interim champion. He used to be a top-ranked guy till he got beat by Patrick Teixeira. Yeah, I would say that's an avenue that Top Rank should explore, but currently Carlos Adames is spoken for. He's supposed to be fighting Julian Williams soon. It's what passes for matchmaking over there, by all rights. Carlos Adames should have been elevated to full champion status late last year when he petitioned the WBC to order the fight between him and Jamal. For whatever reason, the WBC wants to continue to give Jamal amnesty. And the middleweight division is suffering for it. WBC President Mauricio Suleiman on why Jamal Charlo has not been stripped. Charlo was going to face Maciej Suliecki and got hurt.
So?
Charlo fell into a serious episode of mental health problems,
So?
and we are in no way going to turn our backs on him. He's about to return to the ring.
When?
And who against? You say that he had some personal issues, some personal problems, and based on that, you won't turn your backs on him, but in effect, you're turning your back on all the other ranked fighters. You're turning your back on Carlos Adames.
And the middleweight division is suffering for it.
This is the only organized sport that operates this way.
It's not better for it.
It isn't. Any other job, any other profession, if what you've got going on outside of work hampers your ability to do a job for an extended period of time, it's not likely you get this amnesty. It's not likely you get this kind of a pardon for this duration of time.
Nope.
2 years without a title defense. You say that he was going to fight Maciej Suliecki, but he didn't.
So that's no excuse.
In the 2 years that he's been away, the 2 years he's been gone, have you waived all sanctioning fees since the title's not even in circulation?
For all those fighters ranked in the top 5, the top 10, the top 15, and the top 20, have you waived sanctioning fees for those fighters on the premise that there ain't no title for them to fight for? The champion is out of commission, and you're not going to strip him.
So what are they paying you for?
They're paying you for a rank on the premise that eventually they'll climb up those ranks and get to fight for the title. But for the last 2 years, the title hasn't been in circulation.
I maintain my original position that the only reason the WBC has not elected to strip Jamal Charlo is likely because they're receiving kickbacks to not strip him. Financial incentives behind closed doors. Backdoor deals. Yeah, you're not getting sanctioning fees from him for having sanctioned his fight since he hasn't been fighting, but what you are getting are kickbacks. Because for what other reason should you give him this kind of amnesty? You could have just labeled him a champion in recess and afforded him an immediate title shot upon his return.
That would have done it. That would have been enough.
They say that he's about to fight. He's about to return to the ring. Who knows when exactly? Perhaps late next month, late June, or early July. But that's too long. Too long a time for a world title to not be in circulation. And this is a big part of why the middleweight division has stagnated.
It ain't what it used to be.
Preliminary reports of Jamal Charlo corresponding with Demetrius Andrade about doing a showdown between them. Jamal said that he's willing to fight him straight away, but in all likelihood, he's not going to. He's going to fight in a tune-up fight.
There's a lot to reconcile when you think about that. What, you're going to go into a tune-up fight?
You've still got the belt. You've got a mandatory challenger in the queue, but the WBC is going to let you go into a tune-up fight, then what?
What?
Then you're going to fight Demetrius Andrade. Well, what about your mandatory challenger? What about Carlos Adames, the WBC's interim champion?
WBC says they won't turn their backs on Jamal, but they've already turned their backs on Carlos.